I'm going to go ahead and call our meeting to order. I want to welcome you. Today is June 3rd, 2025. Thank you for joining us this evening for the purposes of a public school board meeting. Board President Nate Salazar has asked to be excused, and I will be chairing this meeting as Board Vice President. First, I want to recognize the presence of our association representatives. From Buildings and Grounds, we have President Aaliyah Acampo, Child Nutrition, President Tanya Slaughter, Transportation, Audrey Benally. And then representing the Salt Lake Education Association, SLEA, we have Vice President Chelsea Acosta, and the Salt Lake Association of School Administrators, SLASA, Ryan Hunt, the Director of Budgeting. Okay, she just slipped in. Okay, she could hear, I'm sure. Okay, we'll now begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I've asked Board Member Fife Jefferson to lead us.
Okay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Next, we have some important recognitions, and let's pull those up. I had them right here. We have this Spanish dual language immersion secondary model teachers. Is there someone that's going to?
Yes, Monty Ike, our Director of World Languages, will come and present the awards.
Is this on? Yes. Okay. Good evening. It's my honor to be with you tonight to celebrate two of our incredible Salt Lake City School District educators. The director of the Spanish Dual Language Immersion Program and state team members named Evelyn Miller and Paula Clemente Puello, both Spanish DLI secondary class model teachers. These two wonderful teachers have put a lot of effort into implementing the Spanish DLI program. They are doing an excellent job having their students immersed in and experiencing learning in a positive environment. That environment encourages a sense of community and risk-taking. I have visited these two teachers a couple of times in the past few years with people coming from all over the state and country to watch their classrooms. I remember leaving one of the classes one time and thinking, I have a way now to know, an easy way to know if I've witnessed good teaching. And that was the answer to the question, would I put my own children in this classroom? And without a doubt, in both classes, I would have been thrilled to have my children attend their classes. I would like to introduce you to these two incredible Spanish DLI teachers. When I say your name, please come up and stand in front of the stairs to be recognized. Paula Clemente Puello, and I did not see Evelyn Miller here yet, so Paula, could you come up?
Hi, thank you.
You're welcome.
We have a certificate for you.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you.
Over here.
Okay.
Do you guys want to stand up and come together maybe? Sure. Someone will just stand here so we're later.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that works.
Well, Alan, will you switch spots with Charlotte? Thank you. It balances it under the hand.
Perfect. And
Okay,
scoot in.
thank you. All right. That's perfect. Okay, 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to take one this way. 1, 2, 3. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next recognition is the Utah State Board of Education's Science of Reading Coach of the Year Award. And Chelsea, I believe you're introducing this.
I am, and I apologize for bringing my water with me, but you will likely see why in just a minute. I've had a month of this. Anyway, good evening, esteemed board members. It is my honor to be back with you to celebrate another incredible Salt Lake City School District educator. As you are aware, beginning in 2021, USBE invested in professional learning for K-3 general education teachers, special education teachers, coaches, principals, and LEA leaders in the science of reading in order to improve literacy instruction and student outcomes across the state. As educators began completing their initial professional learning of letters training, USBE began observing schools and classrooms across the state to see how that learning was being implemented. In May, there we go. In May of 2023, USBE created a rubric to determine the level of implementation and solicited nominations for Science of Reading Awards. These awards are presented to individuals who have demonstrated excellence in aligning their instruction with the science of reading and in promoting reading outcomes for students. The recipients of this award are key to helping Utah reach its goal of 70% of third grade students reading on grade level or more. The most recent Science of Reading Award was given to Katrina Stratford, a literacy coach assigned to Liberty Elementary. And I'd like Katrina to come up while I read some of the comments that USBE received from teachers and administrators at Liberty. So these are comments from some of the teachers and administrators that were considered. Katrina provided practical resources that I was able to implement in the classroom, which significantly enhanced my instructional practices. Katrina is excellent with data analysis and is able to help pinpoint what needs to be done for each and every student. Katrina possesses a profound understanding of literacy development and instructional strategies. Her ability to tailor support to meet individual teacher needs has resulted in significant improvements in student outcomes. Sorry. I have adopted a more structured approach to phonemic awareness activities, incorporating daily practice that aligns with the recommendations provided. This has not only improved student engagement, but has also allowed for more targeted instruction based on individual needs. And finally, Katrina has helped me in so many ways to become a more productive and effective literacy teacher. My students have benefited from what I have learned from her. Please join me in congratulating Katrina Stratford on this award and thanking her for her passion in supporting the educators and students in the Salt Lake City School District. Thank you back there. Well, actually, I think it works. Okay, Brian. Okay, be where you're gonna be because I might move Charlotte depending on where you're gonna be. Okay, if you're there, this is perfect. Okay, 1, 2, 3. And then I'm gonna go this way too. 1, 2, 3. Thanks. That's so cool.
I just wanted to introduce also Evelyn Miller, who won the Spanish DLI Model Teacher Award too. Yeah.
Hi there. Yeah, I got you.
I'm the short
Okay, now, wait, don't go. Okay. Okay. Ah, great. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Great. Thank you.
Congratulations.
There's one, and then the other one's been deleted. Thank you again for all of your wonderful work for our district. Okay, we're now going to move on to the consent agenda. And there is a board member request to pull an item off of the consent agenda, specifically the Hand to Heart ink purchase. I also understand there's a clarification requested to updated policies, specifically policy 1-6, school year and calendar. I think that was you, Board Member Anderson.
Would you like me to ask right now?
Yeah.
The only clarification I wanted, and anyone from the policy committee could answer, is that when we're approving changes to the calendar and the policy, that's different than the schedule for the school day, right? The calendar
Yes.
means start date for the year, end date for the year, holidays, breaks, but it does not mean the schedule for the school day.
Correct. We had a
Thank you.
conversation specifically on this.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
What it does is it sets out the next 3 years of calendars for the district as a whole, so parents can see that going forward and make plans around it.
Okay, given the request to pull Hand to Heart, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda excluding item 1B1JJ, which will be moved to the action agenda where we can discuss it.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second on the table. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to a roll call vote. Board Member Longwell.
Amanda Longwell, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Charlotte Fife Jefferson, yes.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Brian Jensen, yes. Okay. We'll take that up on the action agenda. Now I think we'll go ahead and we'll move to the request to speak portion of our meeting. There are speaker guidelines for public comment that I would like to read. We do have one request, so I will go ahead and read those directives. The board enjoys the opportunity to hear from the public during the comment portion of its meetings. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to remind you of our board rules governing your comments. First, the total time reserved for public comment is not to exceed 15 minutes, with all speakers or groups limited to 3 minutes. Second, the board will not allow public comments during board meetings that are slanderous, obscene, or otherwise violate state or federal law. Third, employees and/or their representatives may not use the public comment period to address issues that should be raised through existing formal communication channels or established grievance or negotiation procedures. I'd also like to explain that unless the speaker's topic is already on the agenda, state law prohibits the board from taking action on items raised during the public comment period. However, if it seems appropriate to the circumstances, I may direct district staff to follow up with a speaker on the topic discussed. Okay, we do have Shea Wilkinson has signed up. I'm sorry.
It's not here.
I don't see Shay. Okay. There was also a Rosalie Christensen, but I think she's, oh,
I'd like to speak.
you would like to speak at the 7 o'clock. Okay, time certain. Okay. Well, with that, before we move to our reports and discussion portion, board members, superintendent, and public, we have a time certain at 7 p.m. for a public hearing on the 2025-2026 budget. Business Administrator Kearsley, will you please notify us at 6:50 p.m. so we can begin preparing for the public hearing? Okay. And then that's when we'll move to you and any others. Okay. As a reminder, as we're moving into our reports and discussion, let's be considerate of our time. We have a timekeeper. Bryce is going to be doing that for us this evening. The first round will be 3 minutes, and the second round will be 2 minutes. We can also rely on our parliamentarian general counsel, Christina Kendall, if there are any questions. And before we move to that, as we move to those reports, I need to notify the board and the public that the report that was scheduled, SLCSD Bryant Program Report, will need to be moved to the June 17th board meeting. Dr. Lisam Taylor was going to be presenting that to us, and he has been trying since yesterday to get back to Salt Lake City on a flight from New York, and he's somehow now ended up in North Carolina, and I hope he gets home. So we'll go ahead and we'll move to the next report, the high school rebuild. And is someone present?
Isaac Gastel will be presenting this today.
Good evening. Thank you for some time to meet with you, and I have to apologize for not being here last time, but had a family vacation planned. So that's why I wasn't at the last board meeting.
Do we have your slides? Or you just plugged in?
So it's just the letter that I
Oh,
provided.
okay, just the letter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is this working? Okay. If I may, I'd just like to, before we dive into the details about Highland Fields tonight, I want to provide some context and a reminder of the progress and direction that have led us to this point. On February 18th, I presented the benefits of accelerating construction at West High School by consolidating all educational spaces on the capital side of the campus. This approach allowed preservation efforts to the historic clock tower, allows for better budget predictability, and sets up a clear phasing strategy for construction. In that same presentation, we discussed Highland High School, where I recommended against placing ground source heat pumps on non-district owned property. The board expressed support for that approach and directed us to investigate viable on-site alternatives. Following that direction, we returned on April 15th with a set of temporary field options. Most were received favorably, except for Backman Elementary as a baseball site. Since then, we have continued to study alternative locations and came back with recommendations for Dilworth, Clayton, and Glendale, which Glendale has been approved from the previous board meeting. As questions continue to surface regarding the viability and value of ground source heat pumps, I want to emphasize that this is not a new or corrective concept. It was included in the original bond project list and is a core element of the district's sustainability action plan. It was publicly shared and aligned with broader community goals when the bond was approved. In the spirit of thoroughness and in response to recent concerns, we also reached out to other entities that have been suggested, including the Sugar House Park Authority. While we had initially avoided this option due to strange circumstances stemming from previous agreements involving the Park Authority and the district, we have engaged in good faith. Their board leadership has been open to discussions, but it is important to note 3 things. Sugar House Park does not currently have a softball field. The scope of work required on the Sugar House Park site would likely exceed the cost of preparing the Dilworth location. Most significantly, we would not have a commitment from the Sugar House Park Authority until August, because they have one meeting next week and they don't meet in July and won't meet again until August. So that would be the earliest we could present to them to consider. I must stress that we need to stay aligned with the directions already approved in the bond and the construction plans. These initiatives were presented, discussed, and accepted. If we continue to halt progress of previously approved plans, we will be unable to complete these projects within our planned budget and schedule. So tonight, I'm here to strongly urge the board to reaffirm our course. Without approval to proceed with our current plans, we are dangerously close to delaying construction, escalating costs, and falling short of meeting our commitments to students and families. Specifically, I'm asking for your support to approve investment in Clayton and Dilworth to ensure we have prepped fields ready for next season, and authorize the installation of ground source heat pumps under the Highland athletic fields as originally identified as one of the two options scoped in the bond and as part of our long-term sustainability goals. I also want to acknowledge that the need for resolution at West High School is important, but not as urgent as Highland High currently. This is because we have been working in good faith with Salt Lake City for quite some time with the mayor's office and public lands. We hope to bring a concrete update to you shortly after they complete their internal review and talk with their administration. We hope, in the worst case scenario, if we are unable to secure a third site in time, we will still be in a position based on existing fields and those requested tonight to temporarily accommodate softball and baseball programs by sharing fields until full access can be restored for the third school. Finally, I want to emphasize that these recommendations are not coming from me personally, though I do take it personally, and you guys have seen that, so I apologize. They're the result of months of collaboration with district executive and construction leadership, high school principals, 2 separate architectural firms, engineering groups, and construction professionals who bring hundreds of years of combined experience to each of these projects. These groups meet weekly, sometimes more often, and have already invested hundreds of hours into ensuring that these projects are fiscally responsible and logistically achievable. This is not to diminish the voices in the community, but to reflect on our hours dedicated to planning and digging into the project constraints and provide a doable project. With that, I want to thank you for your time. The letter that I provided previously that is public to see talks about the savings of ground source heat pumps, some of the reasoning why we identified the lower field, or the softball and baseball area rather than the parking lot. There's some concern about, I may have been too vague in my description of additional concept there, but it really could increase our projected cost by a couple $1 million to have to redesign or remove the planned the water retention areas, and also would decrease the number of parking stalls in that parking lot at the end of the project, as well as it would significantly impact the students and teachers trying to operate in the existing school while we're doing the project, because that would tear up that whole area and we wouldn't have a place for about 200 cars during that project. So with all of that, I respectfully turn to you guys for guidance, and I'm happy to entertain or provide any additional information that we have.
Board Member Longwell.
I just want to say thank you for that thorough reiteration of like the past breakdown, because I know, like, just for my sake, there's a lot of things we've been working on over the last months, and I'm sure the community appreciates it too, but that's a good like reminder of the approvals and actions that have occurred, and also a really good understanding as to the lengths that you've gone through in vetting this out. So thank you for taking the time to go through the detail of it.
Thank you.
Board Member Anderson.
I'm not exactly sure, this question is probably a two-parter, but this is a report, so we can't move reports to the action agenda today. So
Right.
does that mean we will have a plan for West from the city by the next meeting, so that we're actually approving plans for both high schools at the same time?
Unfortunately, I can't guarantee that because it's in the city's court right now. They've been very amenable and they've been great to work with up to this point. They just need to vet a couple things before they're comfortable with presenting, and it's their property, so they need to have that time to do that. So I'm not sure what their timeline is on that. But again, and I understand that you can't take action on this tonight. I just wanted to press the urgency that we need to know we need to have some clear direction by next meeting, or we're gonna run into some significant challenges and constraints.
And the reason I ask, and understanding there are some constraints with the city, is simply that it makes sense to approve plans when we know what the total cost is.
Right.
And also that West will be impacted sooner than Highland in terms of construction. Is that true?
They're actually, Highland, the way the progress has been going, Highland will start, or I'm sorry, West will begin first, and it will impact their fields, but within months of the other, yes.
Okay, so pretty close together.
Yes.
And then my only other question for you about the cost modeling is we're looking at the savings, and we know there's a risk of spending a couple of millions of dollars that you said. And the field also costs a couple $1 million, and the past field reinvestment was like $2.5 million, something like that.
Yeah.
So do we have some place where we're keeping track of the costs we've already put into fields? Like, I guess my question is, if we were to do nothing, you're saying doing nothing and using the existing field that they have now would result in increased construction costs over time?
So if
Does
so.
that make sense?
Yes, I'm trying to figure out the best way to say it. So the challenge is if you look at it individually, yes, that's true. But when you look at, in our bond, we said that we were going to invest in sustainability action plan of that those ground source heat pumps. If we don't put them there, we don't have an option at this point, because that's where that additional $2 million would go, potential costs by trying to move it up to the other side. And I'm saying right now, we don't think that's necessarily doable, but that's even in that site, because there's not enough square footage to do all of the water retention, the placement of all the amenities up there, and the ground source heat pumps. And then also the ground source heat pumps, the way they work, they have to be vetted, they have to be ran out to those fields from a unit, and that unit where it's designed is basically the farthest distance away from the parking lot area. So it's on the far northwest corner of the property.
And my last question about the ground source heat pumps is just that you think that's the best course of action to do, because the resolution is like non-binding in terms of like individual action steps, right? You brought like phase 1 to us to approve, phase 2 to us to approve. And so do you think this is a wise investment rather than decline to do that process?
And I think, as Isaac pointed out, in the bond presentation, so not necessarily the sustainability resolution presentations, in the bond presentation, we said we'd build Highland High School with ground source heat pumps. We indicated West High School doesn't have, it won't work at West High School. So we spelled that out in our bond stuff for the bond election. And I think for the long-term sustainability and the cost savings of being able to naturally heat half the building through this renewable energy source that we pay for the equipment and then we're not paying for gas and so forth, is, yes, it's the best course of action.
Thank you.
Board members and Vice Chairperson, did you have any?
No, I think the only thing I wanted to say is that I just wanted to acknowledge all of the work that goes in to all of this with your team. And if we hear of something, it's only that maybe we're trying to save some money or do some, but it's not to undermine the work that your team has done. And just making sure that like maybe some of the coaches or other people that will be using those fields and those buildings in the future, that their voices are heard too as well.
Yep.
So.
Absolutely, thank you. And I don't want to diminish the voices and the input that has come forward during this conversation. I just want everybody to understand that when you get any project, construction project, it's very difficult because on paper it looks real pretty and you can make it work. And then you sit down with the engineers and they're like, you can't do this. You've got a height here, you've got a variance here, you've got all these other challenges. So then that's when that pretty model starts moving like this and twisting a little bit. So we're trying to do the best we can with what we've presented, but in the end, there are always adjustments. But we are getting to a point that we need to have clear direction so we can proceed without delay.
Board Member Williams, did you have any?
Not at this time.
Okay. Board Member Longwell.
Mine's less of a question again, but just more of a comment or acknowledgement that the Highland High School space is really small, especially compared to West High School. So the options that exist, like I'm there regularly with my kids as I'm passing the different schools, and I'm sitting there pondering like how tight that space is for the actual building, let alone everything else you're doing. So I hear everything you're saying.
Thank you.
I just had one question for you, Isaac. It kind of references Board Member 5 Jefferson. Have you had an opportunity, I'm just wanting to ensure that voices were heard, to meet with those baseball families and the ones that are really impacted by this and explain to them? Because sometimes I don't think they hear what's going on in these public meetings. Have they, has there been an opportunity for them to hear? I know that we have your report on the agenda and those things, but I just think that it's valuable to have those interested parties know that they find the information.
So-
One of the pieces we wanted to do is bring it first to you as a board,
Oh, okay.
and hoped that we could refer to this for communities that were interested. They could read the memo.
Oh,
We
okay.
could refer to the board questions that have been asked, to let them know.
Okay, so there is a plan to provide some follow-up with those, it sounds
I've
like.
only seen one, I believe, email on that. I don't know if there are more that have come through to you as board members, concerns about the fields. But I think directing them to the memo that Isaac's prepared. And then the next question is kind of the what to do next with
Right.
the field question that I think we should work through. What I'm just thinking is that we could provide that information here in the public that might be useful for them. So they
Okay, that's what I
understand
want to
this
hear.
decision.
Yeah, that's what I want to hear, that they'll be able to hear this. Okay. Well, without any further questions, I guess, given the issues and concerns that Executive Director Astle and Business Administrator Kearsley have laid out, is the board comfortable giving direction to Mr. Astle that he does not need to delay the Highland High rebuild project and that he can move forward as originally approved by the board? Or do we feel that we'd like to give direction to Mr. Astle on using specific fields to address Highlands baseball needs, or does the board feel like it needs to vote on it next time?
And really, those are two separate things, in that the first question is, can you affirm that we can move forward with the project as originally approved around the heat pump question, so that it doesn't slow up the design and construction plans that are being put together right now? And then the second question is then, would the board like to give direction on using specific fields, or do you want to bring it to a vote on June 17th? So those two separate things, I think.
I think in both instances, it's a little bit unclear to me how we've been told we can't act on items on reports, so thus it's unclear to the public to act on a report in a meeting when we've told people in the past we can't do that. I understand that it's distinct, but it's probably confusing. I think, as I indicated in my questions, it also makes sense to have as much information as possible about West and know the total costs of the items we're approving in sum, if that's possible, before we direct items a piece at a time and end up not knowing the total cost of what we've agreed to without a formal decision in both cases.
And just to follow up, does that mean about the fields? Because there's not an additional cost with the heat pump part of things, to continue with that plan.
And I think I understand what you're saying. I'm sorry. Was it okay if I speak?
Go ahead, Board. Member Longwell.
I hear what you're saying, and I don't know off the top of my head what the original support was as far as the geothermal, but I don't have a concern with if that was part of the agreement was the geothermal, and that's part of that understanding is you're determining like the details, or as Knight likes to say, well, I can't even remember the term. Basically proceeding with that, I'm comfortable with that, and then we actually save the determination as to what we're using for the alternative fills as a motion at the next meeting.
May I offer a point of
Okay, can I just, Board Member
Just
Williams?
clarification, maybe.
Well, go ahead. Oh,
If Ashley's I want to hear her
My,
clarification.
the clarity I would make is that we did say we were doing hydro electric work in the bond, and we also told families in the bond process that we weren't touching their baseball fields. So that's why I think a formalized action about this makes the most sense, because we did say we would proceed with one thing, but we also said we were not touching baseball fields as part of that. So I would just add that clarification.
What I was going to say is I definitely hear the urgency, but procedurally, I would feel more comfortable if we wait until the next board meeting to take a vote on it. I will say for myself, you have my support, but I think procedurally, I'd feel more comfortable if we make the formal motion. Yeah.
Board Member Fife Jefferson, did you have any thoughts on this, or?
Well, I think if we are just, in the interest of transparency, if we can wait until next time to do a formal, but no longer than that, right?
Yeah. And anything beyond that, we're going to be looking at delays, which cost money.
Okay.
Okay, so what I have heard is the board feels that it's best to wait until our next board meeting to take action on this and vote, but we also understand the urgency and that this is going to need to be addressed in the next board meeting, or we really will run into some significant problems.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Isaac. All right, we're now going to move to our next item, and that is, let's see. Yeah, we're moving to the discussion agenda, and we will be moving to the budget, and
Let's wait on the budget discussion until after the public hearing, so let's move to
Okay.
F2, the Joint Educator Evaluation Committee.
all right. Do we have someone that's presenting on,
Nathan Elkins from our HR department, and Logan Hall will present on this one. Sorry, Brian. I knew that.
Good evening, board. I'm excited to be here along with Nathan because after having done this project more than 10 years ago now, Nathan has taken the charge and has done an awful lot of work this last year, working with the board-appointed Joint Educator Evaluation Committee to modify and create some new evaluation standards for several of our educator groups. So I'll let him explain why we're here.
So hopefully you've had a chance to be able to look at the attachments and the requests that we're making that happened through the Joint Educator Evaluation Committee. So just quickly as a recap, because I think it's helpful just to have a little summary of, what the request was, why we made the request. So previously, the Utah State Board of Education changed is this microphone just seems... like there's some
Little echoey.
feedback or something. I'm gonna move that back a little bit. They updated the Utah Effective Teaching Standards, or the UETs. And with that, they also changed some things within board rule, just indicating that educator evaluations needed to be tied to particular standards. And so as a result of that, we can't just make unilateral changes to our evaluation system unless it goes through a joint educator evaluation committee, or the JEEC as we call it. And so I don't remember the exact date, I think it was in January, maybe December, that we made the formal request to create the JEEC, which you all approved. And then that JEEC committee then has been working over the last couple of months to put standards together, to look at standards that needed to be updated to be in compliance with state code and board rule. And one of the things just I would really want to stress, and I think is really important, this committee, the JEEC committee, was made up of an equal parts teachers, administrators, and parents. And I think that's just really important to point out in terms of the way that we work with various groups that were impacted throughout this whole process. And so it was really, for me, it was a pleasure to be a part of that group and hear the different comments and feedback and different ideas that people had about what we wanted to do in terms of making a recommendation to you all for standards that we would use to evaluate our educators. So throughout the course of the last couple months, we've been able to come up with those standards, we finalize them. That's what the attachment is. When you look at the attachment to this request, there are several different indicators that we're asking you all to look at and hopefully approve. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have about those standards, how we arrived at certain indicators and the language that we've chosen for those standards. So I don't know if there's anything specific I can answer for you, I'd be happy to do so.
Board Member Fife Jefferson.
I didn't get to see the previous standards unless was that attached?
They were
Maybe?
not.
Oh, okay. So I don't really know what the difference is as a new board member, but I think what I did see was very thorough and very of good quality, so.
Thank you. And I'm happy to send you the previous standards, just as something that you can have to compare as well. They're also public. A lot of the UETs, the previous UETs are public, so you could see what those standards were. They vary a little bit because the way we take them and adjust them to the district's evaluation just is based off of those, but that's a good starting place. But I'd be happy to send you any information you need for that.
Okay. That would be great, if you could.
Sure.
Board Member Longwell.
I don't have specific questions. When I was looking at it, I was trying to look it through the lens of, like, if you're trying to evaluate somebody, you want it to be in a measurable way, and some of this is subjective. I know you guys are HR, so at the same time, I get the reasoning behind the question. So less a question, more just an emphasis on a presumption that the questions are going to be based on like overarching goals and objectives of the district, because like one of the things, obviously I speak a lot about is special education, so if I'm looking at a general education teacher like evaluation, these indicators do give latitude in determining if a teacher has various children of various needs, whether or not they're special education or not, and that teacher is teaching to all the students in the classroom. So that was what I was looking for in these indicators, is that it gave that scope to encompass all the kids in the classroom, and then holding and like evaluating that teacher on how they're working with all of the students, not just the ones that are, for lack of better words, easier to work with. So I as I was kind of dissecting it, that's what I was looking for, and I did see that you were encompassing that, I guess, flexibility in the language to make sure that all kids are considered as we're evaluating all the people that are supporting our kids. So just a thank you for making sure that wording helps support and motivate that concept, I guess. It's not a very...
Yeah, thank you. That's a really great observation. One of the things I can share that the committee discussed as we were putting these, looking at the language. I mean, obviously the language is very important because you change one word and that's gonna, kind of take in a different path, right? And they were very purposeful about thinking about how inclusive these are when we're talking about including all students. So you'll see words like all, throughout the standards. But they were also very intentional of thinking about how you still have to differentiate your instruction for one kid out of, a class of 25 or what have you, right? So I appreciate that you're observing that because I know that they were very intentional in putting that language together.
Thank you for that.
Board Member Williams, Board Member Anderson. I just had a couple of questions, and okay, so this is going to, well, first of all, the teachers. I was in the classroom for 11 years, and as I am looking at this, we have effective teachers, and that's how every standard starts. I mean, you have standard one, learners and learning, and then you break it down into the personalizing learning and building relationships. And I mean, you certainly are giving the descriptor in what an effective teacher does. How will this work? Because in the past, you had highly effective, you had effective, then you had needs improvement, and then I'm trying to remember, how does this work in relationship to how it was in the past? Do you know what I'm saying?
I think so. So if I go off on the wrong path here, just correct
Okay.
me. So and is this also sort of tied to the last page on the attachment talks about changing effective to meets expectations?
Right.
I'm going to piggyback a little bit off of what Board Member Longwell said. The idea of trying to create an evaluation system that is really as objective as possible, right? That's what we're trying to get to. And I mean, I don't know that you can truly ever make something 100% objective. There's probably always going to be a level of subjectivity, especially when you have humans evaluating other humans, right? And one of the shifts in moving from effective to meets expectations or minimally / emerging effective to partially meets expectations and then not effective to does not meet expectations. We were really trying to create something that felt a little bit more objective as opposed to, well, what does it mean to be effective, right? And at this point, we're just looking at the standards themselves and say, did you meet this expectation or not? And I realize that there's still going to be a level of subjectivity there. But it felt a little bit more objective in that regard. That was one piece that we looked at. And then second piece was that it was just suggested in board rule as the language to use anyway. And so we felt like that was a step in the right direction to just take the suggestion of what was already listed in R277.
Mm-hmm.
So there's kind of just the quick background of where we were going with coming up with that recommendation. I think in terms of, and I appreciate, that you've been in the classroom, you were in the classroom for 11 years. You've had an ECAP before, right? You've done the
Right.
evaluations, you've sat down with your principal and they've gone over, the various things that they thought you did great and maybe some areas where you can improve, right? Having been a principal also, and had that opportunity to coach teachers and work with them and be able to give feedback, but then also for them to say, well, here's what I'm seeing, and we can have that dialogue, right? I think for me, as an evaluator, having the language of meets expectations is a little bit more concrete. I can say, let's just take 1.1, right, teacher on learners and learning.
Uh-huh.
Teacher designs a learning that builds on background knowledge. I can say that I saw evidence of you building on background knowledge or not, versus looking at something like, do I think that it was effective the way that you built on someone's background knowledge? Does that, I don't know if that's answering your
Okay.
question, but hopefully we're getting to where maybe we're trying to go with that. Is that, am I on the right track here?
Yeah, you are in the right track. I
Okay.
mean, because this is really significant to a teacher when they're sitting down having this evaluation. And I think there will be a mind shift with this, where people have to get used to this new rating system. And I am not saying that the old system was, the perfect system, but what I'm saying is people get a mindset and they then start to learn how to respond to that. And when you say to me, it seems more objective, I can see how it does, because you're saying, okay, I observed this or whatever, but where is it built in that you just didn't see it that time, but it really is there? You just came and, I mean, you gave one specific instance, but there may be others where you're in there and that one just does not come up because of what it was you were observing. Do you get what I'm saying?
I do, yeah. This is actually a really great question or observation that you're making. Obviously, it's impossible for supervisors to be able to see every single thing that a teacher does.
Right.
I mean, you're just not going to. The way that our evaluation system is set up, and also the way that board rule establishes, is that you have to observe a teacher a certain number of times.
Right.
In order to gain, for you as a supervisor to have an understanding of, like, I feel pretty good, like I can evaluate this particular standard because I've seen it or not. I've been in this teacher's classroom, 3 or 4 times. One of the things that I think sometimes maybe we don't do as much as we should is the evaluation process should be also, there's this coaching aspect that goes along with it.
Mhm.
And inherent in any coaching process is a dialogue that exists between the evaluator and the person being evaluated. And I think sometimes just because we don't see something doesn't mean that we can't then engage in a dialogue that says, I didn't see this, however, can you tell me how you do this? How do you implement this in your classroom? And at that point, the supervisor can start to evaluate whether or not they think that what the person is telling them back, like, that makes sense. Now that you mention it, I can see where that falls in place, right? Or if they tell them that and you're still thinking, I've never seen that, that's a good opportunity for the supervisor to say, you know what, I'd love to go into your classroom and let's find a time when maybe I could see that, because I'd love to see that in action. And so I think what you're pointing out is really great, because it does create a more authentic way for us to engage in dialogue with the people that we're supervising and evaluating.
I really appreciate that, because I think that in order to have a successful evaluation, there does need to be that discourse where, okay, the supervisor, okay, this is what I'm seeing, but then the individual that's being observed, whether it's a teacher or, you have those other categories as well, counselors and that they have an opportunity to respond in a environment that's safe, I guess, like where they don't feel, for lack of a better term, being called out or something like that. Because what I see an evaluation is doing is helping a person become more effective, and I guess one of the things that I think is a little bit highly effective, you have some teachers, okay, this is me speaking, and if my time's up, cut me off. 30 seconds. Okay. I think you have many teachers that are very effective. But then I think you also have teachers who are highly effective, that are really remarkable. And I think there's something about that too, acknowledging, wow, this person, this individual really has a gift or whatever. And that's something that should be tapped to help other teachers. Do you get what I'm saying?
For sure, yeah, absolutely. I get that if we take away that highly effective rating, it doesn't naturally lend itself to be able to have that conversation as much as maybe as it currently could. I think that's where it behooves us, I think, and I guess when I say us, I'm talking about people that specifically are evaluators, to be far more cognizant of the feedback that we're giving and being very aware of the amount of praise and the type of praise that we give. And that means that we just have to do a better job of training our evaluators to be able to give the right kind of feedback so that those kinds of things aren't lost. Because I think it's really important to acknowledge a really a job that's really well done, right? And who doesn't love to get some kind of positive praise from their supervisor? I mean, it just feels good. It fills you up. And so I think you're right. I don't want us to lose that aspect of the evaluation process. And I could see where these indicators might take some of that away. But I think that's where we can become a little bit more cognizant of the training that we provide to our evaluators and how we can still have those kinds of conversations.
Thank you.
I'm doing a lot of talking here, Logan. You feel free to jump in.
I think it's very well said. It's important to note too, in the new board rule, we do have to make a change from a 4-point system to a 3-point system. So it is
Yeah.
required that that change does take place. But like Nathan's saying, it is incumbent upon the administrator to acknowledge who are the top people. Who would you want someone else to go and observe and learn from? Be able to use that person as a resource as appropriate. So there are currently ways to express, accolades and recognition of exemplary practice, and I think there will continue to be so. And we just need to be very cognizant about making sure to do that.
Did you have a comment or, no? Okay, so I don't think we need to move to a second round.
I was just gonna move, if there were no additional comments, I would move that we send F2, Joint Education Evaluation Committee, to approve the proposed evaluations recommended by the JEEC for teachers, social workers, counselors, nurses, and academic coaches to the action agenda.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Okay. Then we'll move to a roll call vote. Board member Bryce Williams.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Charlotte Fife Jefferson, yes.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Brian Jensen, yes.
Amanda Longwell, yes.
Okay, that's now moved to the action agenda. Okay, we're now going to be looking at the administrative intern position.
I'll start this a little bit, if that's all right.
Sounds great.
So you may or may not remember back in February when we presented the school allocations, one of the exhibits in that allocation is called a General Education Standard Allocation. And on that, we show how many assistant principals are allocated to each of the comprehensive high schools, with East being 3, Highland being 3, and West being 4.5. If you remember, and you may or may not, because it was probably just a slight comment, the 4.5 is problematic because it ends up being an employee who has a position that's 0.5 administrator, 0.5 teacher. Well, those two concepts they have different benefit packages, different work calendars, different, agreements. So when you, we affectionately call it the cat dog, because you're taking two things and mushing them together, and it just doesn't work. And I'd mentioned that we're trying to come up with a solution, but at that point, we didn't have one. Well, that position's currently vacant, So we have come up with a proposal, which is, the goal here is trying to have administrative FTE to student ratio be similar across the 3 comprehensive high schools. And the trick, when we looked at the 0.5, well, if we moved it to a 5, then then West gets out of whack. If we dropped it to a 4, then West gets out of whack. And that's why you end up with the 0.5. So what we're proposing is, in a situation, and in this case, West, where a 0.5 gets them to where the admin staff to student ratio is equal, that instead of going with a 0.5, we put in there an administrative intern position. It would be paid on the comprehensive salary schedule, but it's a 12-month position. So it's a little bit less of a salary than a full assistant principal. And it would be for a 1-year, it would be a 1-year internship position. In some of the discussions we had, well, then it's constantly rotating. Well, the 0.5's been constantly rotating anyway, so that's nothing new for West High School. So that's kind of the background of why we're bringing this. The opportunity's there now, because since there's not someone in the position, we can make some adjustments to it to hopefully in the future avoid this 0.5 admin, 0.5 teacher. Anything else to add, Louis?
I think that was really well said. This has been a problematic position to administer over the past few years, and like Alan also said, the position has had 5 different employees in that position over the course of 6 years since its inception. So this is an opportunity that not only can we correct the awkwardness of the split position, but also create a program in which we are hopefully developing our leadership pipeline as well.
Are there any questions? Member
So,
Jefferson.
okay, I am just wondering if is this position will just be admin related, not teaching? So this full-time person will not be teaching?
That's correct. And currently, the person in the position currently is doing mostly administrative roles. So they are a half-time contract administrator and half-time contract teacher on special assignment. The special assignment duties they're currently doing are testing administration and other duties like that. Effectually, and on the day-to-day basis, I believe that they are doing more administrative duties than not. It's also a complication in that you have, having to wear 2 hats of being an administrator and a teacher at the same time. How are you on one hand in an administrative role that's supervising teachers, and then also in a teacher contract who's supposed to be supervised by that same person? So it makes it very difficult to walk 2 different lines.
Oh, Board Member Longwell?
I just wanted to comment that I think it's a great solution, and it's a great way to facilitate the grow our own model. So I think it's very creative.
Thanks.
Board Member Anderson?
If there are no other questions, I would move that we send item F3, administrative intern position, to provide board approval for the reclassification of the originally approved half-time administrator, half-time teacher position to an administrative intern as posted to the action agenda.
I second.
Is there any discussion? Then we'll move to a roll call vote. Board Member Anderson?
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Brian Jensen, yes.
Amanda Longley, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Charlotte Fife Jefferson, yes.
Thank you all.
All right,
Thank
that's now been moved to the action agenda, and we will now move on to the next item on our discussion agenda, and that is the board handbook update.
Can I just note, so it's currently 6:38. So in the event that this discussion ends prior to 7, we'll take a pause until we hit our time certain 7, because it is the last item that's on the agenda as far as the discussion agenda.
Right. General Counsel Christina Kendall, you are?
I got the nod.
Okay.
So, as you all know from seeing the policies on the consent agenda, the board policy subcommittee met, and that committee also serves as the board handbook committee. Therefore, the board handbook was on the policy subcommittee's agenda due to House Bill 545, the school district governance agreements bill that affected shared governance. So one of the things that the subcommittee talked about was removing the shared governance provision in the board handbook. The conversation was that that the committee would still like to highlight collaboration in the board handbook, because they felt, specifically Board Member Fife Jefferson, and all the committee members felt that they really wanted to stress the need for still having collaboration with all stakeholders. So while that paragraph was removed, Board Member Fife Jefferson suggested that we include in the characteristics of effective board members, which is on page 7, under 4, collaboration, that we change B from seek for understanding through active listening to seek for understanding through collaboration with all stakeholders, as a way to highlight board members should be still engaging in collaboration. Other than those two edits to the handbook, the other edits were just a correction of employee title, namely mine. And also just some updating in the language regarding the conflicts of interest statement to align with the state law requirements and how those annual disclosures are referenced in state law. And we also talked about, and I know Acting Board President Jensen was going to discuss this, but the idea that your board handbook is a living document, and so there might need to be future changes to address board norms. That I know that conversation is scheduled, but this was the last subcommittee meeting of the year, so we just wanted to make sure that the edits for resulting from House Bill 545 got into this handbook, and we had that on the record. And then later, if your board norms are finalized, we can bring the handbook back up for review. So, do you have any questions or comments?
I appreciate your explanation there, Christina. I think that it's important for us to understand that when we're looking at the handbook right now, we're looking at just those revisions, because in our next board meeting, there's a study session scheduled, and in that study session, we would be looking at board norms and expectations and those sorts of things. And to me, that will drive the discussion of the board handbook for future changes. But as we were meeting in that board member policy handbook, we didn't want it to be that we had not brought this to you so that you could see what we had done, and if you had any questions, you could ask those of us. Are there any questions? I don't see any questions. So in that there aren't any further questions or discussions, I'll entertain a motion to move this to action.
I move that we send item, oh, I'm sorry, you're free to move it.
I move that we send this board handbook update to the action agenda.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? We'll go ahead then with a roll call vote, and I will begin that vote. Board Member Jensen, yes.
Amanda Ludwell, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Charlotte Fife Jefferson, yes.
Ashley Anderson, yes. May I ask a procedural question?
Yes.
I know that our business administrator suggested we take a break for 15 minutes, but given the amount of time we have, is it prudent that we move to the action agenda for the items that have been sent there and then return to discussion or our time certain
Oh,
for efficiency?
Parliamentarian says yes.
we are being so efficient this evening. Okay. We will now then move to the action agenda, understanding that there will be something that will move to the action agenda later because we have not had the budget
Right.
discussion. Okay, so we'll now move to the action agenda. Okay, the first item on the action agenda is the hand to heart that was pulled from the consent agenda at the request of Board Member Longwell.
So,
Would,
would
yes,
you like me to speak to why?
yes.
Would you like a motion first?
Oh, I guess we should have
Okay.
that.
I move that we approve item JJ, Hand to Heart, fiscal year 26, Exhibit 1B1JJ, as posted.
And I would like to make a amendment to that, or we could change, I don't know the
Someone would
formality
have
to
to
it.
second it, and then you could substitute.
Yeah.
I'll second then.
Okay, we've got a second, but we've also got an amendment, so I think, okay, how did you want to amend that?
I would like basically a proposed additional language in that document, that where it says, for nursing services at Dilworth Elementary, Clayton Middle, and East and Highland High Schools, and then the addition of, and any other school deemed necessary. But right now, the language in there dictates that it's only for those 4 schools. So I'm requesting that additional language, that it's not just for those 4 schools. Does that make
All
sense?
right, is there any discussion on that?
Will that add any extra cost?
Yeah, the-
No, because it's really student-focused, which students have the need, specifically in their IEP. And we have a program that's actually moving next year to a different school, so we just want the document to reflect that flexibility, that as the programs maybe move or the needs move, that the services can go with the programs and the needed students. So adding that language will just clarify that flexibility.
Well, so that gives us more latitude and, okay, finer clarification.
so-
Oh, yes.
I second the amendment.
Thank you.
Okay, there's been an amendment and a second. Is there any further discussion? All right, we'll then move to a roll call vote.
Nope, you need to vote on the amendment.
Oh, you're right, we've got to vote on that amendment, okay. We'll start with Board Member Fife Jefferson.
Charlotte Fife Jefferson, yes.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Brian Jensen, yes.
Amanda Longwell, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
I
We
move
can
that
now-
we proceed
ahead.
as amended.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Board Member Longwell.
Amanda Longwell, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Charlotte Fife Jefferson, yes.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Brian Jensen, yes. Well, we can now move to the next item on the action agenda, and that one is,
The JEEC.
yes.
I move that we approve the proposed evaluations recommended by the JEEC for teachers, social workers, counselors, nurses, and academic coaches.
I second that.
Is there any further discussion? All right, we'll move to a roll call vote. Board Member Williams.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Charlotte Fife Jefferson, yes.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Brian Jensen, yes.
Amanda Longwell, yes.
That has now passed. We'll now move to the next item on the action agenda, and that is the administrative intern position.
I move that the board approve the reclassification of the originally approved half-time administrator, half-time teacher position to that of an administrative intern.
I second.
Any discussion? We'll now move to a roll call vote. Board Member Anderson.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Board Member Jensen, yes.
Amanda Lungle, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Charlotte Fife Jefferson, yes.
We're unanimous there. That is passed. We are now going to be looking at the board handbook update.
I move that we approve the red-lined version of the board handbook as attached in Exhibit 1F4.
A second.
So we do have a second. It was a contest
Bryce.
between
And a third,
Bryce
yeah.
and, okay, second, third, all right.
I'm noting Bryce for the record.
Okay.
I know Charlotte.
Beat me
the
to
last
it.
one, so.
We'll now move to a roll call vote. It's my turn. Brian Jensen, yes.
Amanda Lungle, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Charlotte Fife Jefferson, yes.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
That has unanimously passed. We have now taken care of all of the items that were on the action agenda.
It's currently 6:50, so 10 minutes until our time certain 7.
All right. We'll take a 10-minute break to prepare for that time certain public hearing.
Okey-dokey. Oh, do we have to move?
Wow.
You have to saunter.
I mean, we don't have to, never mind. We don't have to second.
Oh, and do you remember he brought it to our study sessions? Was it you that brought it in, or was that? Maybe, I don't think it was. Okay, maybe, yeah. I don't know, someone brought it in to me when I needed a charger. And now he says I haven't returned it. I'll ask Wesley tomorrow. Okay. And, cause he helped clean up, he made. Oh, see now, okay, thank you.
Thanks, Helen.
You're welcome.
No, it's 7:00. I'll sell that too.
Kind of fun.
I think that's really fun. Does it have on the back of it or any indication where it is?
Oh,
Utah?
I don't think so.
Is that with,
That helps.
that can help with.
Is it 7?
It's 7.
It is now 7 o'clock, so we'll move to our time-certain public hearing on the proposed 2025-26 budget. At this point, we have one person who had signed up to speak. We will move to you, but you didn't have to sign up for this, so after you have spoken, I'll open it up to any others. Thank you.
This is my first time.
Please state your name. You have 3 minutes as well.
Good evening, Vice President Jensen, members of the board, and Superintendent Dr. Grant. My name is Rosalie Christensen, and I'm here to speak on behalf of our community's adult learners, immigrants, refugees, and working adults who are striving for a better future through education. Horizonte's Class A adult education program has been a lifeline for these individuals. Every evening, they come after long days of work, childcare, or other responsibilities, determined to learn English or earn their high school diploma. This program provides not only literacy and academic instruction, but also hope, stability, and the tools needed for full participation in our society and economy. Tonight, I am asking the board to allocate $340,000 in funding to continue operating this critical night program for the 2025 to 2026 school year, and an additional $20,000 to run a summer session that allows students to continue progressing during a critical time of year when many fall behind without access. Without this funding, our doors will close to hundreds of motivated adults who rely on these services. This is not a long-term request. After this next school year, we will be eligible to apply for a 3-year federal grant that includes the necessary funds to sustainably support the program moving forward. We just need a bridge to get there. Investing in adult education means investing in families, in workforce readiness and safer communities, and in generational change. Our students are parents who read bedtime stories to their children for the first time. They are employees who qualify for promotions. They are new Americans who want to contribute, not just survive. I know you face difficult decisions. I don't know if I could read this anymore. But I urge you to see this request as an opportunity to make a lasting impact. For less than 1% of the district's overall budget, please help us keep the lights on, the doors open, and the hope alive. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other individuals that would like to speak at this public hearing? There aren't very many individuals here, so I think that I've been able to look at every single one of you in the eye, and none of you have indicated that you'd like to speak. So we'll now close that public hearing, and we will move back to the discussion portion of our agenda. And that brings us to our budget reports.
So throughout the last several months, we've been, doing little chunks of the budget, school allocations, different funds. Last board meeting, we presented the full budget book as a draft form, and it is now, it was presented in the document as a link to the full budget book. I believe that budget book's well over 100 pages, so the link was there. And I'm here to entertain any questions on the budget prior to final approval by the board.
Board Member Anderson.
I have a question about the public comment we received, but also to make it more general. If there is an item that is not funded in this budget, such as what the commenter mentioned, is that something that could be directed as necessary to the Finance Committee for future discussion?
Yeah, as y'all know, we set the original or proposed budget, and then the budget gets revised throughout the year as we get new grants, new things come in. So that is definitely something that could be entertained. To address the public comment specifically, the adult education program is both a state and federal funded program. There are no local funds in that program, nor historically have they ever been, as we're kind of, our focus is K-12. So I just want to kind of lay the land of where the funding comes from for that adult education program.
Board Member Longwell.
Kind of follow up to Ashley's broad question, your pointed thing. We've got community learning centers that expand beyond just K-12 education. And then Horizonte's supporting this group, even though our main focus is K-12, and that's kind of a bridge ask. It's not something that can't be considered, right?
Right, with board direction, we could allocate, or we could discuss with the foundation if there's resources available there to help address this bridge. Some of the issues, I haven't had a conversation with the principal at Horizonte. I know which grant she's talking about, so I'm fully aware of that situation, but I haven't had a discussion with the principal at Horizonte about this particular issue.
So how would we go about giving directive to have follow-up discussions about this? Like make a motion to have it be brought to the Finance Committee, not necessarily a motion, but be it directed to go to the Finance Committee for further discussion?
Yeah, our next Finance Committee is scheduled for the end of August. I just want to clarify, the program isn't going away. It's just that there's additional grant funding that we'll have an opportunity to apply for, that we have not had over the last couple of years to further expand, but the program's not going away anyway. The state and federal funding is still there.
So they still will be able to maintain what they have been providing the community?
Again, don't know all the details, speaking with the principal, but the basic program, the funding for the program is still there from the state.
Continue with an adult education program. We've not received the federal dollars yet for that program, and there's some concern about when we will receive those. We just don't know. Typically, we've received them by now. But the plan is to continue providing the services. It may be in a different kind of service delivery model, meaning different payment, different teachers, that sort of thing.
Okay.
Are there other questions from the board members?
I don't have a question, but I did have a comment,
Oh,
if that's okay.
Yes.
So in our recent Finance Committee meeting that we had last week, we had a good discussion about how this budget comes to pass and why some board members, including myself, have recently advocated for using what's called a zero-based budgeting process, where you look at how you're allocating every single dollar to zero. And we discussed, why that's challenging on a district level to do, each and every year. And that it raises problems like coming from the public comment where if everything's at risk every year, it becomes very challenging. But we talked about our current board policy where board members can request financial audits of specific departments or programs. And it was suggested that using that policy, it may be something the finance committee takes up in the future to look at a rotating cycle of programs or departments who could undergo a zero-based process to ensure efficient spending and look at topics like those that emerge in the comment period, because we can take a deeper dive into programs without relying on an individual board member requesting an audit. So that was something that, as this moves forward, I think that's important to raise, that there are other strategies we have to consider how we look at this on a more, micro scale in the next budget cycle.
Thank you. I guess mine is just a comment as well, and it's a follow-up to Board Member Longwell, Board Member Anderson. I mean, when we're listening to that public input, of course, we're anxious to, I appreciate your explaining that the program is not going away, that you don't know the specifics, but this is something that can be addressed, or
Right. If it was deemed, we only have so much money, so we start at the top priority and work our way down. The budget funds all, the K through 12, our school allocations, our class size allocations for FTE, it funds those programs. And then looking at, okay, what else might we want to address or fund? Those conversations can continue to be had.
okay. Is there any further discussion? Board Member Fife Jefferson.
Okay, just about the budget in general?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know if this is appropriate to ask now, but I'm wondering if we could, if the board is interested in looking at, maybe we look at it in the future, but having more teacher incentive, or like the matching grant, the matching funds for the state.
Teachers, effective teachers in high poverty schools.
Yeah, effective teachers in high poverty schools, so that program, because we've never utilized that, right?
Right, that requires a significant match, which is why the districts never really participated in it. Again, not to say it's, I believe when we looked at it last, it'd be several $100,000 to put the district's match in. So those are always conversations we can have as we look at priorities. And if those are the things that rise to the top of the priorities, we look at ways, can we fund it with our current funding system, or do we need to have the board look to potential tax increases to fund those programs?
Brian?
Board Member Longwell.
Mine, a comment and kind of along with what Charlotte was asking, but the budget I'm fine with. It's mostly, we've talked about this in the finance committee, but we have a fund balance, and we've gotten the triple A rating for the bond, which, acknowledges our financial stability and such. But this is just kind of an ask as we gear up for upcoming year board meeting discussions is let's have, and I'll go through the formal process, but really dissect monies that we do have available that we can reinvest into our kids, our teachers, via whether it's turning part-time positions into full-time positions, coaches, whatever they are, really looking at how we can invest in the education if we've got enough extra funds to be able to do so versus it just continuing to sit in the fund balance. Obviously, we need to keep a healthy savings account, so to speak, in case bad things happen, but if we've got some more to work with, then let's do more.
Board Member Anderson.
I was just preparing to make a motion if there were no other questions, so I can wait.
I just wanted to interject that I really appreciated the time that you had taken to support those small groups so that we could come in and specifically go through the budget with you. And in my meeting with you, Alan, there were areas that I had focused on, and I imagine that other board members had other areas. And I appreciate the information and the explanation that you provided to me, and I would imagine it was helpful to the other board members. So thank you for your time in supporting that. I'll entertain your motion.
I move that we send budget item A, the 24-25 revised budget, item B, the 25-26 proposed budget, item C, the 25-26 proposed tax rate, and also potential direction for the Finance Committee regarding programs to the action agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there further discussion? Then we'll move to a roll call vote. Board Member Fife Jefferson.
Charlotte Fife Jefferson, yes.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Brian Jensen, yes.
Amanda Longo, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Okay, that has passed unanimously. So we can now move to our action agenda. Do we need to have further discussion on? I'm going to entertain a motion.
I move that the board approve the revised budget for the fiscal year 24-25 as presented, also approving the proposed budget for the fiscal year 25-26 as it has been presented, additionally approving the adoption of the certified tax rate for the 2025 tax year, and authorize the business administrator to make any budget adjustments necessary to reflect funds received from that final approved tax rate, and also to direct the Finance Committee to discuss both teacher incentive programs and adult education in their August meeting as discussed.
Second.
Any discussion? Thank you for including those additions, Board Member Anderson. Okay. Let's have a roll call vote. Board Member Longwell.
Amanda Longo, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Charlotte Fife Jefferson, yes.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Brian Jensen, yes. That was unanimously approved as well. We can now move to the superintendent report on our agenda.
Just had one item to talk about today. Just want you to know the work didn't stop on Friday with the graduations. Well, first to say thank you for coming to the graduations and your fine speeches for those of you who spoke at the graduations. That was a fun time. I must say, it's a lot of graduations in one day, but it's still a terrific event, and hearing particularly the student stories of their lives is quite remarkable. But the work continues. Today we had within this room 175, did we have the wall and back removed, Tiffany, or all the way through? 175 elementary school teachers here for 2 days of training, yesterday and today. In fact, yesterday they filled up the parking lot so that we were spilling into the streets, and we had to incentivize carpooling today in order to make it possible to park. I just am really appreciative of the elementary teachers for being here for that. It was a training, a leadership training, on how to lead professional learning communities. One of the ways that we're working to improve instruction and student achievement is by requesting that schools do professional learning communities in all their grades across subject areas and things. And our team has been working hard for over a year with teachers and leaders on their facility with creating these communities of teachers together that can look at data and support kids. And we're doing it again this year. We're continuing with that effort in this next year. So this was another opportunity for them. There was great energy in the room, and just a shout out to our teaching and learning folks including Dr. Tiffany Hall, who led the session today, much of the session. And School Leadership and Performance, who helped with that as well, because their collaboration is making such a difference in our district in getting that together. Tomorrow, we bring in the secondary school teachers for 2 days of training that way around professional learning communities. So good instructional pieces happening in the district, and I'm pleased with where we're headed that way. So thank you for that work.
Okay, we'll now move to our board member reports.
You have a bond update from our finance committee? Because I didn't put it in mine.
I thought you wanted to.
No, I do the rest.
Oh, well, it sounds like you have been encouraged to give us a finance committee report.
I don't know, we took it off the agenda because he requested it, if I remember right.
If we need to wait, then you can wait.
Well, so we did meet as a board finance committee last week, and I don't have the agenda in front of me, so I'm going by memory, so I'll probably miss stuff. We had a internal audit update. We didn't have a report from our internal auditors. They're working on finalizing their latest audit, which should be finalized in the next week or so. We did complete our RFP for our external auditors. So we have two sets of auditors, internal, external. When we present the financial statements, those are audited by our external independent auditors, and that's Squire and Company. We recently held an RFP process, and they were the winners of that, so they will continue to be our auditors for the next while. We also have Eide Bailey as our internal auditors, and they look more at, they're not really looking at our financial statements, but they're looking at operations and efficiencies and compliance issues as well. We did have a good, robust conversation about fund balance. The bond rating trips kind of emphasized how important it is to have a healthy fund balance, but you also don't want to hoard more money than you need. So it's finding that happy place of what your fund balance is. There's one district in the state that has a fund balance policy, but others do not. They just emphasize the importance of a healthy fund balance. So those are kind of the discussions we had on that. And
I actually wrote a lot of that down, but I thought you were going to update about the bond sale process.
yes, so, okay.
But you crossed a lot off my
Yeah.
list.
So we
which
did have our bond sale 2 weeks ago. We had a successful bond sale. We had 8 bidders on our bonds. We ended up with 3.99% interest rate, which is, based on the market, it's with our AAA bond rating, the best interest rate we could have gotten. And Bank of America was the winning bidder. We close on that tomorrow, so we'll have our closing process. The funds will be deposited into our account, and as Isaac was talking, we're moving forward with these rebuild projects. Money will be in the bank. All right, is that what you wanted?
Yes.
Perfect.
The finance committee is tag teaming it, I guess. All right, board member reports. Board member Fife Jefferson.
Okay. I just wanted to say that it was a real pleasure to accept the graduates at Horizonte. And I enjoyed that, seeing all the graduates, and I have another graduation that I'll be going to with Skyview Academy at the Utah State Prison, and I'm really looking forward to that, so.
That's great.
Yeah, so it's not quite over for me. But I want to congratulate all the graduates and all the hard work that we did that all the teachers did and everybody did to make sure they were, met all the qualifications, and I hope the teachers have a really great summer, educators need a break, so.
Thank you. Board member Longwell.
don't have a lot to report. It was a joy to be at the graduation and just really see the outcome of all of the hard work for everybody involved in helping these children succeed, and the joy on their faces as they're getting ready to head on to their next chapter. It was just, it's funny, decades later after we've all like graduated and then kind of seeing that excitement through their eyes, it's a priceless moment. So it's just a pleasure.
Board Member Williams?
Yeah, also echo the appreciation and excitement around graduations. Honored to have accepted SLCSD's graduating class as well as West High. A quick, very funny kind of story. As folks may know, I work at the University of Utah, and new student orientations are happening at the U. And I was doing a presentation on student leadership and engagement this morning, and there was a group of about 5 students from West in the audience, and they were talking before the session started about different people. What school are you coming from? Yada yada. And 5 of them, like, oh, we went to West High School. And I was like, oh, you went to West High? And they looked at me like, you accepted our class. We recognize you from our graduation. So that was kind of funny, but.
That's fun. Board Member Anderson?
So there are still a few items to tag team. I was not as versed in the bond language, but you did get almost everything from our agenda from memory, which is impressive. A couple of things left are that we discussed the cash receipting system. So like when you buy a ticket at a school, when you have to contribute at an event, that the new cash receipting system changes will be delayed until potentially second quarter next year. And I know schools have been looking forward to that change, but also know that the finance director, Christy Hart, is working very hard to make sure that a new receipting system does not roll out until it is ready, so that it has the best utility for everybody, which is important. And in addition to what was assigned on our action agenda tonight, the committee also needs to discuss charter school financial reports and end-of-year discretionary balances on our August agenda. We also discussed that if the administrative intern role was approved tonight, which it was a good opportunity to remember the board could use education about how internships are currently used at our high schools, if at all, and especially if they're used informally, so we can codify some of those practices in terms of building our leadership structure. Graduations have been noted by many, and I specifically wanted to congratulate Kyle Bevan and his family, who did work tirelessly to support him making it to graduation with many medical complexities. It was a very moving part of SLCSD's graduation to see them rally around their peer. I also wanted to mention Happy Pride. It is more important now than ever to acknowledge the contributions of our LGBTQ students, staff, and families. And I want to applaud the actions of our mayor and city council in adopting affirming and inclusive ordained city flags. And I hope to see some of those city flags in our district as well.
Okay, it's now my turn for a report. And first of all, I kind of feel an obligation as a past USBA board member to remind you of some upcoming events. And you should have received a memo from Jennifer Partridge on this yesterday. But what that was reminding you is there is the pre-delegate and delegate assembly that are coming up this Friday and Saturday, June 6th. That's the pre-delegate assembly from 6 to 8 p.m. And then the delegate assembly is on the 7th from 8 to 12. In a previous email you should have received from Julie Llewellyn, who is also with USBA. She provided attachments that reviewed with you the USBA JLC priorities and all of those things. And I would encourage you to go back and look at those. I mean, they are out there advocating for our school districts. And I think even though we do not have a board member seat, as we have had for, I don't know, the last 80 years or whatever, that it's important that we're engaged. Along that line, I just want to remind you that Ashley Anderson, you're one of our delegates, okay? And Nate and Bryce, you're the alternates. So between you three, will be represented well. And that doesn't mean that the rest of us can't participate. And I think it's really valuable. You know, I've attended those the last few years in my assignment, and I would encourage you to, if you have that time in your schedule, to participate. Next, I did want to just say to my constituents and teachers, I have received your emails about start and end times and early outs, and I'm working to respond to those. There are lots of them. I have expressed to the superintendent my concern as a teacher about planning time and how with these changes we need to make sure that we're providing those opportunities and that. And I recognize also families and your concerns about Fridays and opportunities for your children on Fridays. So I have not forgotten those. If you have not received one, and if you don't, I'm sorry. Maybe I didn't see it in all of the ones that I've gotten, but I'm working through those. Finally, I would just echo about graduation. It was graduation. That's the really good stuff. I mean, everyone's succeeded on that graduation day that's there, and it's wonderful to celebrate with them. And it was really an honor for me to accept the class at Highland High. Amanda's over there smiling. She was there. That's my alma mater. I was singing the songs, and oh, Bryce, you were there. And
I heard it too, Brian.
oh yeah, okay. But I was also there at East supporting them. No, I'm there for East as well. But anyway, it was really fun to see those graduates. And Amanda, you were talking about reflecting on your experience. Well, I'm old. I was reflecting on my experience because this is my 50-year reunion. So that was fun to speak at that particular graduation. Yeah. Thank you. We do have need for an executive closed session, so I will entertain a motion for that.
I move that on June 3rd, 2025, the board go into closed executive session to discuss the character or professional competence of an individual and immediately adjourn at the conclusion of the closed session.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? We'll move to the roll call vote. Are we at Board Member Anderson?
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Brian Jensen, yes.
Amanda Lugwell, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Charlotte Fife Jefferson, yes.
All right, we'll move to closed session and it will adjourn from there. Thank you.
There's no
You know
law
what?
with
Okay.
it. You just-
I'll put this down as I do this.